And welcome to the 439th meeting of the Penn State Retirees Association. We have a great program we feel today in regards to the state of Pennsylvania's recovery from the clutches of COVID-19 and also some current information on the PA budget. However, before I introduce today's presenter, I would like to introduce the president of the Penn State Retirees Association, Glenn Carter, for some brief comments and updates. Glenn?
Thanks, Chris. Coming to join me, if you can see her, is my wife, Doris. Welcome to everybody to be on board. Looking forward to having you with us. This has been an interesting year and a half. Yesterday, your board of directors met for the first time in a year and a half live, if you can believe that. We spent 2 hours working on issues with regard to our strategic plan and programming and other things. What a very bunch of folks. Good to see their smiling faces. Just yesterday, one of the things we did yesterday was to review the final draft of the postscript, which I have in front of me. The postscript is something that goes out to all retirees every year. That just went to the press, so look for that in the mail within a week or two. The other thing we're pleased to announce is that we will be having a live in-person session at the PSU Museum and Ag Progress site in September. I'll let Chris give you more details on that. We're looking forward to having everybody there and having a presentation in the museum. I don't think I'm going to take much more time than that, but we're looking forward to having a good crowd today and look forward to having the senator's presentation. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Glenn. Senate President Pro Tem Jake Corman represents all of Center, Mifflin, and Juniata counties, as well as a part of Huntington County. After serving in numerous other leadership positions, he was elected by his colleagues to serve as the top-ranking official of the state Senate in 2020. After spending more than 2 decades in public service, Senator Corman has earned a reputation for being a pragmatic leader. He has played a pivotal role in addressing numerous issues in the legislature, including leading the effort to reform Pennsylvania's pension system in a way that preserved all of the benefits owed to retirees while creating the biggest financial turnaround in the country. He also authored a law to reverse the NCAA sanctions against Penn State and direct $60 million to help victims of child sexual abuse. In addition, he authored the Timothy J. Piazza anti-hazing law that serves as a model to strengthen anti-hazing laws nationwide. Please join me in welcoming the President Pro Tem of the Pennsylvania State Senate and proud Penn State alumnus, Senator Jake Corman. And Senator, I forgot to mention, if you want, you can ask questions for the Senator during the presentation. Just push your Q&A button. You can enter your question and the Senator will address questions after his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for allowing me the opportunity to join you. You know, as you mentioned, I've been in the legislature now for a little over 2 decades, and every time you think you've seen it all, something new comes up, right? You know, I thought living through the Great Recession of 2008 would have been the biggest challenge that we would have as legislators to figure out how to move forward. And then, of course, now this pandemic, you know, changed all our lives. And the fact that we're doing this through Zoom as opposed to, you know, some location where we could all see each other and spend time together just is another indication of how things have changed over the last year. You know, but like any challenge, you have to step up and meet it and adapt. And we've tried to do that. We've tried to have done that over the last year. And at times we worked well with the administration on it. At times we had issues with the administration. But the one thing I always tried to do over the last year with the administration was, you know, I may have disagreed with some of their decisions, but I never followed it down for what they were trying to accomplish. I think the governor and the administration was always thought they had the best interests of the people's of Pennsylvania's in mind when they were trying to do things. Obviously, facing a pandemic like this, there's no manual to sort of pull off the shelf and say, well, last time we had a pandemic, we did this. There's no sort of wise old person in the room saying, here's what you do. we were all trial and error. And anytime you're trial and error, you make mistakes. And I think clearly mistakes were made over the last year. But again, there was no sort of roadmap for us to follow. And so we muddled through it together. And now it seems that we are coming out the other end thanks to the vaccine. And soon we'll be, we're going to see gatherings again. And hopefully we're getting closer and closer to normalcy. Things will change, and we're looking forward to having all the students back this fall. Obviously looking forward to, for the community economically and just for good spirits, having a full Beaver Stadium again. And hopefully we'll continue down the path of everybody getting vaccinated and having a safe return to normal behavior for our community. In the meantime, though, as I said, there were differences with the administration. And I think the biggest concern that we had, and me as the president of the Senate, which is an institutional officer, my job is to represent the institution. And our government is set up in a way that is, checks and balances, right? You have 3 branches of government, and each one of them has a certain amount of powers, and they all check each other. We check the executive branch, the courts check all of us, and that's the way our government was designed. And so the big issue, not just in Pennsylvania, but all over the country, and not just red states, blue states, mixed states, was executive branch power, and essentially how the executive branch operated over the last year unilaterally, making all the decisions. Who could go to work, who couldn't go to work, who could go to school, who couldn't go to school, who could get health care, who couldn't get health care. All these decisions were being made essentially by one person. And our government wasn't really designed to operate that way. And certainly for a time, an emergency, we have set powers for the governor, as we should have, that they can come in and provide for some safety. But when you have an extended period of time, such as this, the people's voice in a lot of ways were shut out. And so that's been one of the big debates that we've had in Harrisburg over the last year. And I think the voters ultimately decided that in the May primary, when they voted to give the legislature a little more authority moving forward. Hopefully we won't have to use it. Hopefully we can figure out ways to work together, and hopefully we won't face anything like this ever again. But if we do, I think now we'll be able to be prepared to move forward. Again, learning from our mistakes, learning from the past, and that's what's so important to do. Financially, obviously, this was a challenging time, because when you shut businesses down and you shut the economy down, that takes a hit. And the state gains its revenues through consumption, through income tax, that's people working, sales tax, that's people purchasing things, business profits, taxes, all those things generate revenue for the Commonwealth then to spend on essential services. That obviously took a significant hit when people weren't working. And people weren't buying things, obviously. Fortunately, with the money we received from the federal government, we were able to get our budget balanced this year. We were able to take on some significant issues that really took a hit. Long-term care, nursing homes really took a financial hit, and all the things they had to do to stay afloat during this last year. We were able to assist them in a significant way. We were able to help out, one area that's very important in our community, affordable housing. And when a lot of the affordable housing projects were bid out and done so they could come in at a certain rents, this was before all our costs went up, right? And a lot of supply lines really affected the pricing of constructing those rental units or housing. And so we were able to step in and square those projects up so we can continue to address that very significant need of affordable housing. And other areas as well, education. Obviously, all the school districts received a significant amount of money from the federal government, Penn State, and other higher education institutions as well. And so, I'm not sure where that printing machine works in Washington, D.C., but they certainly they seem to be continuing to print it. And so we're trying to put it to the best use as possible. One of the areas that another area that took a significant hit was transportation. When people aren't traveling, people aren't purchasing fuel, and so then therefore revenue to help maintain our road system is not there. So we were able to put some money that we received from the federal government towards transportation. Obviously, one of the big projects that I've been fighting for almost my whole entire career is the final path from the top of Seven Mountains into State College. That was a project that was on the books 20 years ago, and unfortunately, Governor Rendell at the time pulled that funding. And if he would have let that get done, it would have cost a heck of a lot less than it's going to cost today. But Governor Wolf, to his credit, stepped up and agreed to fund the final few miles there. And that's a significant project for this community. Everyone talks about sort of Penn State football Saturdays, and that's important, don't get me wrong. But my issue there is more the safety of the road. As you all know, it's a 2-lane road with poor sighting, and it just takes a little pilot error to go in the other lane. And we've seen the devastation that has happened over the years on that highway. And, I think of Penns Valley school buses traveling on that road every day, morning and afternoon. It at times keeps me up at night thinking about that. And so we're hoping to continue that project. They did a nice job with the intersection down there at Potter's Mills, and now we want to get the last few miles. And we're going through that process right now. As I said, the governor has agreed to fund it. And that is a major transportation project for us in this community, as well as the Interstate 99, Interstate 80 interchange, which another dangerous area. That high-speed interchange is under the plan to be constructed as well. So we've been fortunate in Center County over the years to have a decent amount of transportation funding in this community. I know my colleagues are envious of when they drive through here of the things we've been able to get completed, and we will continue to do that. So it's been a difficult year, but I think as I said, we've come through it on the other side, and we're looking forward to the future. And the economy, I think, was doing very, very well prior to the pandemic. I think it's all the elements are there that it'll pick up. And one of the things I'm hopeful for, and I'll close on this and be happy to take questions. I always figure these things are better if I take your questions as opposed to me just rattling on. But I'm hopeful that this is for our folks in Washington, D.C. and our businesses, and not so much our corporations in this country. We all seen what has gone on with our supply lines since this pandemic has happened, and it's hitting today. You can't get a new car today because there's not enough chips for the cars. And you go into any store and the shelves are not nearly as packed as they once were. And I hope that through our corporations are seeing that sending everything overseas to be done because of cheap labor ultimately is not good business. And I think we have the workforce here. We have a great workforce here. We continue to produce a good workforce. And shipping things overseas to get them done cheaper than shipping them back may have made some economic sense at one point of your corporation, but I think what we learned through this pandemic is it does not make good political sense. It does not make good community sense, and hopefully we can reshore a lot of these jobs that corporations have taken out of this country over the years and bring them back here to this country where we can do them environmentally better. We can do them safer. And I'd put the American workforce up against anybody. So hopefully this is a lesson that we've learned, and then when we can come out the other side, a lot of reshoring of manufacturing comes back to the United States, and I hope a lot of it to Pennsylvania as we rebuild this economy. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions you might have. I don't know if someone's going to quarterback the questions or I'm just going to read them.
Senator, I think you're able to see the questions which are coming in. I see it. This is from Ed. Do you believe Trump won the election in Pennsylvania? The answer would be no. I believe Joe Biden was certified the winner. And do you believe we should spend millions on a recount like Arizona? Well, it's interesting you bring up Arizona, because Arizona is going to have its a press conference today, and I think they're going to announce, I don't know if they're announcing some of the results or what it is, but they're going to have a press conference today dealing with what their findings are. One of the things that
is an important role for the legislature is to provide oversight, and then learn from whatever oversight we have of the executive branch and other forms of government, so that we can put laws into place to better whatever it might be in Pennsylvania. And obviously, election issues were obviously prevalent at the end of November. We had a lot of changes in the election code, and so I think it is proper for us as a state moving forward to put new procedures, processes in place to enhance the voting experience and enhance the integrity of the process. My phone calls have been flooded in my office about the election, and that's why we passed an election code. Actually, the first thing I did as President Pro Tem was to design a committee on election integrity, bipartisan, 4 members from each side, with no voting abilities, but to hold hearings and research the issue of elections and learn from other states. And ultimately, what we want to do is increase access for everyone to vote as easily as possible, but at the same time, make sure that there's security in that process, that everyone believes in the results. I mean, sometimes Republicans win, sometimes Democrats win, and we all move on because that's just the way the American people are, and we govern no matter who wins, and that'll continue over the years. And but what the threat to democracy would be, and threat to our process, is people don't believe or in the results. And so again, the idea is to make it as easily to vote as possible, and at the same time make sure that there's belief in the system. And so we held many hearings in Pennsylvania to review what other states have done. Interesting, blue states have more security than Pennsylvania has. Some red states have all day voting. They have early voting that some people in the Republican Party seem to have concerns with. So I thought we learned a lot. We passed a bill. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed it because he didn't like the voter ID, which I think is essential as we move forward. But we will continue to provide whatever oversight that we think is necessary. Again, it's not to look back, it's to look forward and to learn from how we have voted in the past and how we can improve upon that. So let me go to the next question from Sarah. What is happening with Penn State's budget? We note that other institutions in the state systems are merging and taking drastic budget cutting measures. Well, I can't speak to the Board of Trustees and some of their budgeting issues. Obviously, the state system has come under a lot of pressure from a couple areas. State system being the Lock Haven universities of the world and those schools. We were able to flat fund all those schools this year, put a little more money in for the transition of the state system schools that are going to be merging. And the state system schools have really been hurt in rural Pennsylvania because of the population drop, and that's going to continue. And quite frankly, Penn State's growth and their branch campuses and offering 4-year degrees where they didn't before. And so those areas like a Mansfield, like a Lock Haven, like a Clarion have really struggled with their attendance and their enrollment. And so we've had to take some steps to try to keep them all afloat because they're all very important. I used to represent Lock Haven. Obviously, Lock Haven University is paramount to the economy of the city and community of Clinton County and Lock Haven. And so, we're trying to take steps to make sure that they can all maintain their infrastructure in those towns, but at the same time, do what we can to help with their enrollment and offset their costs. Penn State, obviously, is still doing very well. Their enrollment is very high. And so, we've had a pretty good working relationship with Penn State. We've been able to get them a lot of public improvement dollars to do infrastructure improvements up on campus, not just here, but all over the Commonwealth. So their tuition is a little higher than other state schools around the country. And that's more because we fund so many higher educations. Most states just have like that flagship state like Penn State, where we fund Pittsburgh, we fund Temple, we fund Lincoln, we fund the entire state system. And so it's unfortunate, and I think that's something we have to continue to address. But I think overall, Penn State's budget is in pretty good hands. Obviously, they're now in a presidential search. So we'll see how what new leadership that they choose, and then adjust and work with them from there. Question from Tom: what are you doing to encourage passage of Senate Bill 222? Maybe I'm embarrassed to say this, but I'm not familiar with them by numbers. So if you want to give me a specific add-on to that question, what that bill does or deals with, I'll be happy to address it. From Mark Miller: can you share any details about changes being made to help protect and assume the future solvency of the service pension plan? Well, that was something that obviously I was very involved with, and I think we've made great strides in this area. And it, when I was being introduced by Chris, one of the things he referred to me in my bio was being pragmatic. Obviously, both the SERS and the PSERS system, which is our state education retirement system, came under a tremendous amount of pressure from a variety of things. One, we took on a lot of new liability back in the early 2000s when we did an enhancement when both funds were about 120% or 30% overfunded. We did what a lot of times people do is you enhance the benefits when you have that kind of resources. Unfortunately, we then lived through 2 recessions, which were fairly unprecedented, which, obviously one of the ways that we fund these systems is through investments. And so those investments did extremely poor because of the recession, and therefore took on even more water, and the system became imperiled. So one of the things we did with Governor Wolf is got to a negotiation where we developed a hybrid plan moving forward. Everyone who was retired and everyone who was in the system would go unchanged, but new employees would go into this new hybrid system where you still keep partial of your defined benefit plan, but also would now encompass a defined contribution plan, which then took about 60% of our risk off the books in the systems. And that was a huge deal for us planning moving forward, was getting rid of some of our risk. And, to the governor's credit, it was probably more than he wanted to do. It was not as much as I wanted to do, but we came to an agreement, and it's a lot better than the future or the current law at the time was. And we improved the system, which is what you're supposed to try to accomplish. So I think by removing that risk, we have assured the solvency of the SERS plan. And, we can meet all our, we've grown our contribution level at the state to where now we are meeting the required investment from the state. For a while there, we were not, because quite frankly, it raised so high with all the losses that we had and the new liability that we had taken on that, we without a massive tax increase, we couldn't live up to our contribution. So we put a path in to grow it into our contribution, and we've now met that. And I think the SERS plan is in a much better place than it's been in a decade or so.
Sure. I'm one of the panelists, and I cannot ask a question through the chat, but as a follow-up to that,
Sure.
The 2001 change increased retirement benefit by 25%.
Right.
Those of us that retired prior to July 1, 2001 had no adjustment. The cost of living since 2000 has increased by 50.3%. Is there any prospect for a COLA, especially for those who were at the 2% rather than the 2.5% multiplier? Thank you.
Sure, that's a great question. One of the things I thought was unfair about the 2001 law was that certainly raising benefits is okay because we raised contribution. But when you gave credit for all, essentially you were contributing a certain level to receive a 2% multiplier, and then you had to raise your contribution to get a 2.5% multiplier, which is fair. But they gave you credit for all your past years, but you're only paying 2. And so you had people who retired very short distance from each other with a completely different retirement package. And then when we took on all the losses, it made it impossible. I mean, COLAs, although we're never in the law, there certainly was an assumption that we would do a COLA every so often, every 2 or 3 years. I think the state normally did a COLA. Well, when the system became so exposed, and the liability came so high, we didn't have the money because the COLAs are paid out of the system, and so we weren't able to do that. Now that we've gotten our footing back, I have been arguing, and we have not gotten there yet, that even though it's still difficult to do an entire COLA, doing a COLA for those retired prior to 2001 is completely appropriate, because of the different types of retirement plans, retirement benefits packages that people got. My father, who probably most of you are probably familiar with, served in the Senate, and I always refer to him as a notch senator because, he got there after Watergate when they reduced the package, and he left before they raised it, and so therefore he got probably the smallest one of any legislator ever served. That's timing. That was, that's just the way it works. But I certainly am an advocate of doing something for prior 2001 retirees. I think it's only fair, and we're going to continue to work to try to make that happen.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sure. Next question. There are lots of jobs available. People don't want to work because they get free money. What are you doing to correct this problem? Good question, and it is an issue. It particularly has hit the service economy more than any area, and a lot of this is federal, right? I mean, as long as the federal government continues to print money and continue to send money to individuals not to work, a certain population or certain segment of our population is going to take advantage of that. I think it's wrong. Certainly during COVID and when we weren't allowed to work, those benefits are certainly appropriate. But we've now begun the work search again, where before, if you were getting any type of benefit, unemployment benefit, you still had to perform some sort of work search. They halted that for a while during COVID. That is now back into place. And, so it's clear, I think it's time for the federal government to begin to step back, allow the economy to work. There are lots of jobs out there. There's a competition for employees right now. And you see it. I mean, particularly in the service industry, people offering bonuses to people coming to work. Minimum wage isn't even really a discussion because they're offering $16, $17, $18 an hour, some of the places. So I think, certainly understandable, the unemployment comp and the things they did for people while they weren't allowed to work. But now that they can work, I think it's time that we slow down those benefits and, go back to the process where you got to go look for work. It's a hand up, not a handout. And again, there's plenty of jobs there. So it's really mostly federal, and they need to move forward on that. I got the update on Senate Bill 22. Thank you. It deals with redistricting reform. We passed that in the Senate in the last session. Redistricting, just a quick jump for everybody, is we do it 2 different ways. You have the state legislative seats, meaning the state Senate, state House, which I serve. And that is done by a commission. There's a 5-person commission, the 4 floor leaders, Senate Republican, Democrat, Senate Democrat, House Republican, House Democrat, and then the Supreme Court picks the 5th. And they've done that. They picked Chancellor Nordenberg, and Chancellor Nordenberg will be the 5th person. Those 5 individuals will negotiate and put together a map. That map will then go to the public. The public will have a certain amount of time to review it, and then they'll take the public input and then come up with a final map. That's how the state legislative stuff. That's set in our Constitution. We passed a constitutional amendment in the last session to get into place to take it sort of out of the legislators' hands, even though it's just 4, and put it into a sort of a independent commission. That didn't pass in the House, and so now, since that's a constitutional change, there's nothing that we can do about that. The congressional reapportionment is done by a bill. It's like any legislative bill. It goes out of state government committee onto the floor of the Senate, through the House State Government Committee onto the floor of the House. Again, we're now in the midst of doing this, and so I don't think any change to the system is possible. Again, the folks that we tried to negotiate with to make that happen earlier we were not able to get to any kind of agreement. So I just saw the state government chair in the House talk about, he's promising the most transparent process ever as far as doing congressional reapportionment. This is something unique this year that hasn't had in 40 or 50 years, is that you have mixed government. Last, I believe, 3 or 4 times congressional redistricting was done, there was one party in control, whether it was Republican or Democrat. Well, now you have a Democrat governor and a Republican legislature. You're certainly going to have to negotiate a final map, which will probably produce a more fair map. And so we're looking forward to completing that. We are a little bit of a challenge because the data, the final data from the census is delayed. Normally get it by April. They're now promising they might not come until end of September, October, which puts a lot of pressure to get something done prior to the primary next year. I mean, not only the primary, but you get petitions that start usually sometime in March. And so, you like to get a map in place so that the voters can see that and people can decide where they live and where they want to run or not. And not getting the data prior to October really puts us in a time crunch to complete that. So I'm not sure why the Census Bureau is taking so long, but that's we've actually, I've said, because I don't want to condense it so quickly that you're leaving out public input, that possibly we move the primary back next year to give Pennsylvanians more time to go through this process. So hopefully it'll produce something that's fair, and I'm confident it will, as I said, since we are going through negotiations. But as far as the actual bill goes, I think that time has passed, and now we just have to move on with the system that we have. Next question: how can people be encouraged to work instead of collect money for not working when so many jobs are available? I think I addressed that. What can we do to help many businesses which are trying to hire staffing, but potential workers are not happy? Because I think I addressed that. One of the areas I was over in Blair County about a month ago, they have a new training center there, the local labor union, trying to train a workforce. And, I talked about the job that are available now that are not being fulfilled in the area of the service industry. If we get a federal government bill dealing with infrastructure, and a lot of money comes to Pennsylvania to do a lot of this work, we got to make sure we have that workforce. And that's why one of the things that I have been done in my career is to try to work with our local, because we don't have community colleges in Pennsylvania, is work with our local vocational schools like CPI, Central Pennsylvania Institute of Technology, and how it's grown over the years and producing a workforce, not only for high school students, but they have a post, an adult education program, which is done very, very well in getting people skills to provide some of those jobs and workforce. I've worked with Mifflin and Huntington County as well, but these training centers that like the labor unions have are also as well is that's really great, because you can earn money while you're learning a skill. And so, we're trying to do whatever we can to produce that workforce. So we don't have the problem. And when we want to do big projects and infrastructure improvements, if the federal government does finally move forward, that we see in the service economy now. I think that's the questions that are out there at the moment. I'll be happy to take anything else if maybe, hang on.
Again, as a panelist, I can't enter a written question, but I do have another one, sir, if you would consider it.
Sure.
Pennsylvania has lost many, many millions of dollars as a consequence of its failure to impose any royalty on gas extractions from fracking and remediation of environmental damage. Are you prepared to push for a reasonable payment from the gas extractors to reverse this long-standing inequity? Every other state in the nation, I believe, does impose some kind of a tax on the extraction of non-renewable resources.
Sure. A couple of things there. First of all, just so we're clear, all these energy companies pay all the taxes that every other business in Pennsylvania pay. And they also pay a local impact fee, which is not insignificant and raises some nice money for the communities. It just doesn't go to the state, where most of other people's extraction taxes go to the state. Our impact fee stays local and goes to local communities. I actually negotiated a extraction tax with Governor Wolf, and we passed it. It had some reforms in the permitting process, so that the businesses could benefit from this plan as well. Unfortunately, it did not pass the House. Actually, both sides didn't like it because the Republicans in the House didn't like the tax increase, and the Democrats in the House didn't like the permitting reform. So it's just to be. I always look for solutions, and I think that was a fair trade-off. So it didn't get done. So I don't see any of that happening in the near future without that sort of an agreement. And since the governor's backed away from it now, I suspect that it won't happen anytime in the near future. But again, they do pay all of the taxes that every other business in Pennsylvania pays. They do pay an local impact fee. And I don't suspect, if you look at the state-by-state comparison, although everyone taxes differently, that the tax burden in Pennsylvania is less than it is in other states. I did get another question. As the political discussion of raising minimum wage advances, what can you do to help folks understand the short-sightedness of ignoring pension COLAs in that context? Again, I think I addressed the COLA issue. I think it's something we should do. The minimum wage discussion is sort of taken. I negotiated a minimum wage increase with the governor. Again, it did not pass the House. I thought it was the right thing to do. Senator Tartaglione, a Democrat from Philadelphia, and I negotiated that. Would have moved the ball in the right direction. I think we're well overdue to raise the minimum wage. But now it's because the wages are so high, because the competition for employees, it's probably not as a prevalent issue as it once was. But again, I think a COLA, COLAs are paid out of the pension system though. And that's the difference. And we got to make sure CSRS can afford it. But again, we should address it to the pre-2001 employees. They certainly deserve it, and will continue to push to complete that. That's the questions that are there now.
Well, I have
Chris?
a question, Senator
Sure.
Corman. In the news lately, we're hearing in some of the states that there's been an uptick in the COVID-19 infections. Do you see any concern in Pennsylvania if, in fact, we start going in the opposite direction? I know that there's going to be, with Penn State football coming up and other large venues. How will the state react if, in fact, we do have an issue where things are going in the wrong direction?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, again, we're all learning, right? I assume this vaccine that we received will be similar to, like a flu vaccine. There's going to have to be some sort of booster, some sort of annual process to keep us safe. We sort of had two. If you notice, last year in the beginning of the year, when we didn't know hardly anything about it, when it first came, obviously the reaction was to shut everything down. And we did that. And I think even the governors realized that was a mistake, because in the fall, in the winter, when we hit another spike, which was actually worse than what was in the spring, we didn't react by shutting everything down. We reacted by doing different things. I think instead of the governor trying to pick out what is an essential service, what's non-essential service, we'd have been better off picking out who can provide a safe environment for employees and allow them to operate. We've learned so much that now, by looking at CDC guidelines, we can provide safety without necessarily shutting down and making everyone stay home. So that's what we did through the fall. And then we also learned that, obviously certain segments of the population are much more vulnerable to COVID than other parts of the population. And so you need to address it that way as well. And so, as we watch, right now our numbers are very low. I think people are able to deal with it and understand it. But it's something we're going to have to continue to monitor. And if the numbers get really high again, then maybe some measures will be appropriate to be brought back in. But as you said, when people are returning to life, you see packed basketball arenas, watching the NBA or NHL and baseball games and all that. So we are getting back together, and Penn State's looking to have full stadium this fall. So that will, we'll just have to stay on top of it, right? And make sure that we, make decisions we need to as if we do get a different variant or a rise in our cases.
Thank you.
Another question popped up. Republicans are concerned about voter fraud. Democrats are interested in voter participation. So why not have both? I would agree 100% that, there's a lot of things we can do to enhance voting opportunities. One of the things that we've been discussing is right now that when you vote absentee, if you make a mistake and don't sign it correctly or don't date it correctly, that your ballot is disqualified. Well, I think that's wrong. I mean, I don't think we should have disqualification just because you made an error. I think there should be an opportunity for the voter registration office, if they get the ballot in time, to contact you so you could come in and correct your ballot. These things like drop boxes, they never happened before. They were sort of created by the Secretary of State. Again, no problems having it. Just make sure that there's a security to that process. So, as sort of the motto was, make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And I think that's where, your comment is well taken. A lot of red states, I guess Florida, have very, very open absentee balloting, early voting in Texas. And so we should make it as easy as possible for people to vote. That is so important for people to participate. It makes people like me much more responsive. The more people who vote, and that's positive for our democracy. So I would support both those measures of doing everything we can to enhance the experience of voting, make it as simple as possible, but also make sure that we have the security in place so that people can have confidence in the results. I'm messing up here. Hang on, put my thing down. Next question. Will children be required to be fully vaccinated in order to go back to school in September? What will happen to those who do not want to be vaccinated? I don't believe children will be required to be fully vaccinated. That's going to be a school district by school district type of decision. You're seeing that play out in the higher education. Some schools have required it, some have not. So I don't know that there'll be a requirement. Public schools are open to all kids. Again, it's a less vulnerable population of COVID. So I don't think that that's going to happen. Brenda, how can we encourage our legislators to work across the aisle for the benefit of the citizens instead of adhering so tightly to partisan positions? Some legislators seem to forget they represent all of us. Look, I agree. I have a reputation in Harrisburg of being someone who will work across the aisle. I get very frustrated of watching things in Washington, D.C. never get done. The states, because we have to balance our budget, we have to compromise when we had divided government. And for a good bit of my career, now for over 14 years of my 20-year career, we've had divided government, and we were able to govern. Tom Wolf was up here at Penn State the other day, and he and I have a cordial, friendly relationship. We don't agree on a lot of issues, as he said, but we're not disagreeable. And we have, on many occasions, come together to solve problems of Pennsylvanians. And that's so important because, again, compromise is not a four-letter word. And, as long as you're improving the system, compromise is a good thing. And I go back to the pension reform that we did, Republican and Democrats together. So as a citizen, I get very, very frustrated that in Washington, D.C., they just sort of wait every 2 years to reshuffle the cards and see if they get a better hand before they want to pass anything. They've been talking about doing an infrastructure bill there for multi presidents in multi-year, almost a decade long now, and they still haven't done anything. We did one in Pennsylvania without them because we couldn't wait any longer. And so, I have divided government in Pennsylvania. I'm not waiting 2 years to find out if I can get a better hand. I'm going to deal with the hand I have that the people of Pennsylvania gave me and get things done. And, I think that's why I've always tried to operate. And I would like to see more people do that as well. Thanks for the voting answer. How about election day registration or automatic registration for all citizens, as in South Dakota? I don't have to register ahead of time. One of the issues we had with that is the counties. We've lowered the amount of days. Before it was like 30 days that you had to register before so you could vote. We reduced that to 7. The counties had real problems with that, and they've asked us to actually increase it back to 14. So, obviously our elections are run by the counties. The third part of our election bill that I didn't talk about was to try to assist counties in a way to help them run the elections. And so that's been the holdup there as far as same-day registration, is trying to work with the counties so they can still operate the elections. Next question. What specific instance of voter fraud do you know of in Pennsylvania that backs up your opinion that President Biden backs up your President Biden was not elected by the president? I didn't say that he wasn't. He is. He was certified winner in Pennsylvania and in the country, and he's our president. But I did have a lot of problems and spent a lot of time in court with the way that the Department of State was operating. And I think the way they changed a lot of the rules of the game. And so I would continue to take on that battle and provide the oversight. I thought our former Secretary of State knocked down a lot of the security measures that were in place that led to a lot of this contention. With one thing I said to them beforehand, look, this was the most divisive election of my lifetime. I thought 2000 was difficult. This was even harder. And what we needed was, sort of an obvious winner and an obvious loser, and then we all move on. But when you knock down a lot of the security issues that the Secretary of State did, now in our internet era where facts don't have to be part of anything, you give rise to all of these sort of theories about what went on, and that's unfortunate, and that's obviously not helpful. And I'm glad the Secretary of State resigned. I thought she was the most partisan Secretary of State we ever had, and the most incompetent. The Secretary of State is supposed to be like the neutral arbiter, and we've never had Republican or Democrat administrations a problem prior to this year. Secretary of State doing the things that she was involved in, and our Supreme Court didn't help either by changing the law in the middle of the process. These are all the things that I think led to a lot of this discontent. And one of the things that we're trying to put into place moving forward, that people, again, just know what the rules of the game are and don't have them changed at the last second. Please address problems with illegal immigrants being transported to states throughout the country. I'm strongly against this action. Again, this is one of these issues that, it's obviously a federal issue that they don't address. Obviously, we're a country of immigration. We're a country, all of us, forefathers came from somewhere, right? And we should have a very healthy immigration process, a legal immigration process. To me, it's a slap in the face of all the people who came here legally and established residence, established work, that, we turn a blind eye to people coming in illegally. It's not that we don't want people coming into this country. There's a reason why people want to come to this country, for opportunity. But our federal government has let us down by not developing a system or coming to a compromise that can deal with this issue. And so now when President Biden was elected, you're seeing this mass rush to the border, and they're trying to locate them in different places. Tom Wolf's been open to that. And that's going to cause a problem for us as far as our services and so forth as they sign up for services. So, it's just, as a citizen, as a father, it just makes me shake my head why our representatives can't come to some sort of agreement to put a process in place that makes sense. It seems like it's just so politically divided that they both have an interest not solving the problem than they do solving a problem. And I just think that's wrong. And they need to continue to work on it so that we can have a healthy, legal immigration process. Well, Chris, I don't see any more questions. We've got about 50 minutes in us here, so I don't know if you want to conclude.
Well, again, thank you so much, Senator
Sure.
Corman, for your time.
Enjoyed
I know this is a very busy time, and we really appreciate you giving us your time. And I think the format of having folks be able to ask questions is great and well received. So it looks, I don't know if one came over that we can take a last question, maybe.
Okay. So what's the last one? Oh, great job. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate the feedback. I so much enjoy this type of a setting where we can interact. For me to try to figure out what you want to hear from me is a lot better than it didn't hear from you. So I really appreciate the interaction. It's a great way to hopefully allow me to explain some of my positions and some of the challenges we're facing, and hopefully I answered a lot of your questions that you have.
Well, thank you for your service, and the Penn State Retirees Association thanks you for your time and the effort that you've given us today.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, just want to remind folks that this presentation was recorded and will be available on the Penn State Retirees website. So if any of you know anybody that didn't see it or you want to review it again, please, in a couple of days or so, check on the website. I would like to say that if any of you know anyone who has retired from Penn State and is not a member of the Penn State Retirees Association, we would encourage you to please ask them to join us. We're looking for new members, and of course, we're also looking to retain the members we have. And we are certainly interested in your feedback, any comments, suggestions that you might have. We do have newsletters coming out. Glenn mentioned about the postscript, which is going to press. There is information in that, contact information for each of the board members. So if you have any suggestions, opinions, even program ideas, we would certainly encourage you to reach out to any one of us. Our emails are in this information you'll be getting in the newsletters. And we do want to make sure that we continue to serve our retirees and to the best ability that we can. A couple of reminders of some things I also wanted to bring up. Glenn had mentioned about the fact that we haven't been able to meet in person, and so we're very excited with our next annual event, which is September 9th. It's our annual picnic. We are looking forward to having that in person. It is going to be out at the Ag Farm out on 45, and we certainly would encourage you to attend. You will be getting something in about another couple of weeks or so, registration form that you can fill out in order to attend the picnic. We do have a great presenter, Dr. Ray Najjar, who's an oceanographer at Penn State, and will be talking to us about environment issues related to the oceans and the waterways. I think it'll be very interesting. And also you have the opportunity to tour the museum out there after the presentation. So it could be a real nice time. It's going to start around 11:30 and for some social time and see people in person. It'll be nice to see everybody. And then our lunch, and then we'll go and have the presentation. So we certainly hope you'll consider that. And as I say, there will be information coming out in the mail to you in order to make a reservation for that event. Then also, we're working on our annual benefits meeting that will be in November. We don't have the date firmed right now, but we will be working with our Penn State HR representatives and with our healthcare representatives. That's always a well-attended meeting in which retirees can find information about their Penn State health benefits and ask questions and get some updates. So we're looking forward to that. I don't know whether Glenn or Alan or anyone out there that is part of the panel has any comments, suggestions, opinions, recommendations.
None for me.
Okay, well, again, we thank you so much for
say-
your time. Oh, go ahead, Glenn.
I just want to say thanks for your help, and thanks for everybody for joining us. Look forward to you in September.
Very good. And hopefully everybody have a good day. And as I say, we're looking forward to seeing you face to face. So enjoy the rest of your day.